From conflict to concertation, the rural code experiment in Niger. The Maradi region shows the same agroecological division as Niger, with three contrasting areas from south to north. An agricultural strip along Niger's border, which is densely populated. A less humid central zone of mixed agricultural and pastoral land. And finally, a pastoral area in the north, where Sahel gradually gives way to desert. The border of the pastoral area, set up in 1950 on the 300 mm per year rainfall line, aims to protect the region from agricultural settlement. It is called the northern boundary of cultivation. It constitutes an essential element in the organization of rural space in Niger. The pastoral area, covering 3/4 of the country, is complex, with its inhabitants mostly made up of tribes, temporary camps, and villages. Territorial boundaries are therefore difficult to establish. Extensive breeding is practiced in various forms, often with mobile herds. To ensure this nomadic breeding continues, the lands, located in the northern area, belong to the state and are freely accessible to any cattle farmer. In contrast, in the agricultural area, private land ownership is common, apart from some areas allowing the cattle to cross and to rest. Yet, the decreasing land availability, the demographic explosion in the south, as well as the harm drought ravages on the livestock, all contribute to disrupt this delicate balance between men and resources, and conflicts arise. Example 1. Digging a well without consultation. A nomadic cattle farmer in a pastoral area. When winter comes, we leave the south with our herds looking for pastures. We can stay for 3 or 4 days. Then, when the grass becomes sparse, we look for a better place, and so on. When we are told about a green area, we go there. We never stay long at the same place. When the pasture is exhausted, we have to leave. Did you complain to somebody when you saw they were drilling a well beside yours? No, at the beginning I didn't tell anybody about it, because I am not here permanently, but only during the winter. If I am reacting now, it is because I am losing my animals and I risk having to settle soon. There are no pastures left, and I am losing my animals. If every one of us decides to settle here, this proximity will end with a conflict, because we will start cultivating the soil and become settled people. We are unhappy because they did not ask us before coming to drill the well. Before doing it, they should have come to us to ask where to install it. I would have told them. Here is my thinking. If wells are very close together, it can bring problems because animals can pass on from one to the other as they wish. We would then have to chase them away with a stick, and the owner would be unhappy. We never stopped anybody from drawing water from our well, neither those coming to drink, nor those who wanted to water their animals. We have always seen our grandparents doing so, and we keep on doing it. Even if I am not pleased, what can I do? Nothing. I don't even know who to talk to. Example 2. Lack of land certificate. A farmer in an agricultural area. This field, it's a long story. My father and those cultivating it now are concerned. They are friends. My father lent him the field, but his friend fell ill and died. Right after his death, my father wanted to get back the field. But his friend's children told him, "We don't know anything about this field because we never talked about it when he was alive. There's no reason to talk about it now that he is dead." Then they said they did not agree and that the field belonged to them. There is the story. And our father asked us to leave this matter in the hands of God, and that's what we did. If we had had a paper, for sure, it would have never happened, because when you have a paper, everything is clear. When you have a paper, you write, "Mr. So-and-so lent his field to Mr. So-and-so." That is what is written on it, isn't it? But in this case, there was no paper. Example 3. Settling in a pastoral area. If I came to work in a field here, in a pastoral area, it's because I had a lot of problems. I am a farmer, and in my place, an agricultural area, I didn't have enough space. That's why I came to settle here. But it created problems. The cattle farmers told me it was a pasture, whereas I wanted to cultivate land. The conflict started that way. The chief of the tribe, cattle farmers, threatened me to have my field grazed by the animals, but the chief of my village was against this. He asked them to leave me alone until the harvest at least, and only after that could they chase me out. What am I going to do now? I'm going to wait. I left this field, and now I can only pray for God to give me something to do, as I don't have enough space to cultivate. I only work on 3 hectares, and I am not allowed to expand my area. Now I support more than 15 persons. 15 persons to feed. In order to avoid conflicts that could bring us to slaughter, to kill among brothers, among ethnic groups, I left this field. Still, I really need this field. How is it living together with herders and cultivators? We live in spite of ourselves, pushing one another. If you cultivate a field and you tell them their oxen must not enter, they reproach you for it. And when the animals graze your harvest, it is your turn to reproach them. That's the way it is. We all have to be patient. The Rural Code was created in Niger specifically to prevent and limit this kind of conflict. It is a set of laws stating the principles of land administration and more broadly of natural resources by laying out the agricultural and pastoral areas. It emerged from a long participatory process spread over nearly 20 years. In concrete terms, it is based on the gradual forming of land commissions called COFO at various territorial levels. Thus far, they have put into place several thousand basic COFO in charge of organizing consultations in the villages. In addition, a few hundred district COFO gather the land information, and around 10 department COFO direct the process. The village chiefs, the mayors, and the prefects preside over these collegial commissions, which are supposed to represent all the participants in the rural environment. We are still far from having reached all of the objectives that were set by the Rural Code. In particular, control of territory development and putting in place of a rural dossier have reached a standstill. Moreover, thousands of basic COFO still need to be created, while the way of functioning and actual implications for the inhabitants are sometimes still up for debate. Nevertheless, this constantly advancing process has permitted numerous improvements which can be credited to the land commissions, especially in regards to conflict prevention. In the Maradi region, the demarcation and the securing of agricultural and pastoral areas is progressing. Moreover, efforts are being made to increase the awareness of dates set to open and leave the fields. This has contributed to a calming of the recurrent tensions between cattle farmers and cultivators, especially at the beginning and the end of the wintering period. Permanent Secretary of the Dakoro Department Kofo. So, we are here in Dakoro, the administrative center of the department. I present you with the Land Commission's achievement map within the framework of the marking of pastoral routes. The red lines, from north to south, are the lines of movement of people and their livestock. The green polygons are the pastures. In blue here, you have the Tarka Valley, going through the department of Dakoro from east to west. Here, with the dotted line, you can see the northern limit of cultivation, as per the law of 1961. The green line is the progression of the agricultural front into the pastoral area. Here, we are in front of a boundary stone that demarcates a pasture, the Bargas. It is called BA and has a number, 187.
La commission foncière a dégagé une stratégie pour la réhabilitation d'un couloir.
The Land Commission adopted a strategy to restore a corridor. The first step is to identify the corridor. Then, the Land Commission's members ask each village chief and a few representatives from each village to show them the route of the corridor, that is to say, where it passes. After following the itinerary of the corridor and seeing that this corridor really exists, we make an inventory. We look at where it is damaged, and when it is damaged, we want to know why, what happened. After the identification mission, which is then approved by a report, we start a campaign to inform people. This is to say, we organize meetings in each village. We explain to the population that we are going to send people to do the job of marking territories. There is, in particular, the team that will come to do the markers with paint. A worker will also be in charge of the actual marking. He is going to do the job with you, with the population. We inform people. In any case, we give them a sense of responsibility. Finally, before leaving, we ask them to think about it and choose 3 people to be members of the follow-up committee. They will be in charge of the following up concerning the demarcation of the corridor. After, when the demarcation is done, we will do another activity, the planting of euphorbia bushes. Farmer in Saminti, agricultural and pastoral area. Why did you cultivate in the crossing corridor? My own ignorance made me sow seeds at this place. When I realized it was a crossing corridor, I stopped. Me and my neighbors, it's true, we broke the limits. But we did not see it. Now that the corridor is demarcated and marked, we know we mustn't go beyond this limit. We all benefit from this crossing corridor. The cattle farmers that come here in the Tarka Valley allow us to take milk and meat from their animals during their stays here. How are the conflicts now with the creation of the corridor? There are no more conflicts now. This crossing corridor has helped us avoid conflicts between herders and cultivators. There are less agricultural damages and no problems with the animals because the corridor is far from the fields. And in our own interest, we made the fields further away. Have you ever heard of the Rural Code? Yes, I have heard of it. Do you have any idea of what it says? Honestly, I do not know anything. We are illiterate here. How do you expect us people to understand? We must be patient. Field operation of a department land commission in an agricultural zone. We set up a committee, 4 persons per village, 3 plus the chief. It is up to them now to do the job. They have to ensure that people respect the grazing area and the crossing corridor. And if anyone violates these limits, it's up to the committee to inform us. The chief of the village has to contact us. Today we found that nobody had entered this zone. Between the periods of planting and hoeing, it is important for you to make sure from time to time that everyone respects these limits. And in the nearby villages, we have also asked them to monitor you. This is the end of the grazing area? Have we not yet entered the field here? No. Village chief, where is the line? From here it's straight ahead. From here, is that right? Yes, that's it. With GPS, once the reference is made, it's over. It's set forever. Even someone coming from Niamey can go directly to this site, even unaccompanied. It's true, the state wrote the texts. Everything is mentioned in the Rural Code, but in terms of operating these institutions, the state does nothing. So we must go to the technical partners. The vast majority of commissions you can see on the ground have been put in place with the support of the partners. And even here in Dakoro, it has been possible to set up district land commissions only with the support of partners such as CARE, PAZEL, PAC, or URDA.
Le PAZEL, Programme d'appui au secteur de l'élevage, le PAC, URDA.
Currently, among the 14 district commissions planned, we have implemented 11. And if we are still missing 3, it is because there are no partners willing to operate in these areas, or that these partners are not so interested in the land commissions. The COFO are also responsible for issuing land certificates. In the field, the issuing and storage of these papers is complex but really necessary. especially because inter- and intra-family conflicts are exploding in the southern zone, and the informality of land transactions causes many problems in solving disputes. Too often, very small landholders prefer to hide the loss of their land from the rest of the community. Chief of the village Dankade agricultural area. People pawn their field and we are not aware. This is frequent. They refuse to pawn their field in the village and prefer to do it elsewhere. Often, some people sell it without informing the chief of the village. People come to see the village chief only when conflicts arise. Then the chief of the village says, "But I did not know that you did that." And in this case, it can lead to a conflict. The most frequent conflict is when a father lets his eldest son cultivate his fields during his lifetime. Later, the other children grow up, but the eldest considers the field belongs to him. His father gave him this field for cultivation. But once the father dies, if the eldest continues to believe that this field belongs to him, a conflict will arise between him and his brothers. His brothers do not agree, since they were unaware of the agreement, and there are no witnesses to testify. The fields. Well, the population increases, but the available fields are dwindling. Before, in the old days, we had the bush. Our grandparents only had to move wherever they could to create a new field. But now there is no more bush. All we can do now is ask a brother for one of his fields, and if that is not possible, then you take your stuff and you go to Nigeria. A public crier. Listen to me, everybody. This is an announcement for all field owners. We will issue a land certificate for the Isaku field, which lies in Mantakuna. This field is bordered with those of Omaru, Bizo, and Adar. We will give you a paper for this field. If someone wishes to challenge the ownership, there is 1 month to go to complain to the association which takes care of farmers and herders. He must go there, to the Kofo. Nowadays, when the head of a family owns a field, we issue a paper certificate. We write a paper and we give it to him. And even if you go to live in Nigeria, we issue a paper for the field that you inherited from your father and you have sold to one of your brothers. And to avoid any future conflict, we will deliver a copy of the certificate. We give 1 copy to the new owner, and we keep 1 as well. If you wish to pawn your field, you must tell the chief of your village. You tell him, "Chief, I gave my field to so-and-so." You choose witnesses whom you should pay just as you pay the chief of the village, approximately 1,000 francs each. And we write a paper, a certificate in triplicate. Paper for the field that lies in Hawadama, field of the chief of the village Mamanabu in Hawadama, southern part of the Kwara Row, where the water stagnates. It is bordered in the east with Ibrahim's, chief of the village Tapki, in the west with Amadou Igia, who sold it, and in the south with Haja Tatakude, his mother. This is for the sale of a field, and that's for the pawning of a field. So here we have the papers to sell and pawn? Yes. Where do you put the papers you've drawn up? You keep them? Yes, I keep them. Here, well, I forgot where I put them, but I keep them. Here, for example, I swear to God, I forgot where they are. I keep them in several places, and often I leave them here or there, and I forget.
D'abord, je commence par les actes de propriété.
I begin with property deeds. There is the certificate of donation. There is the customary detention. There is the sales certificate. And then there are also deeds, loan agreements, contracts of customary pawning, contracts of leases of land.
Le contrat de gage coutumier, le contrat de location de terrain. En grande partie, les actes de transaction.
Transaction deeds are mainly set at the grassroots, at the level of basic land commissions. From our side, we want to popularize these deeds so that people are increasingly using them. Because before, everything was informal. Transactions were hidden. This has been the situation since 1993, and it explains the many conflicts between rural operators, because there is no written record of existing transactions. Everything is done without deeds, so our goal is to encourage the population to enact deeds. That's why we make the forms available to them.
C'est pourquoi on a mis à leur disposition des imprimés.
With the rural code institutions, the concertation and management of local resources is increasing, especially among the basic COFO that have been put into place. This is in spite of clear difficulties in the operating and sometimes in the legitimacy, along with a low level of familiarity with the rural code. Meeting of the Basic Land Commission of Ardol Awel. Here we have developed rules that provide space for everyone. Thank God, if a person runs into problems, he need no longer turn to the help of faraway authorities. We can directly implement our rules. And if the person does not agree with us, in this case, we can refer them to the higher authority. For example, we inform the nomadic herders who come from elsewhere that here we do not settle next to water points, and we ask them to go further, to move away. They can come to water their animals, but not to settle. And most comply with this. Regarding logging, if we see someone cutting trees, we forbid him to go on, and they stop. We have also solved the issue with nomadic herders responsible for damages in the fields and grazing the whole bush. We're really happy. The COFO has done this by bringing together the villages in order to identify different spaces. But despite this, among people of these villages, even I, nothing prevents me from taking my axe, and as there are no markers around the fields dedicated to animals, I can cultivate. And if I am told that the COFO will stop me, I'll answer, but where is the COFO? That's why we really need to delineate with markers in order to end such conflicts. What we find is that even if we try to prevent someone from cultivating a field, if the chief says, let it be, do not touch this space, this is a grazing area for animals, even in this case, the guy can circumvent and seek permission from someone else. In fact, he'll go to the head of his village and he'll ask permission from him. Then he comes back here and he starts to cultivate his field. And it is here that he will cultivate, not in his village. We are used to seeing it here. You know that. In the basic COFO, there are farmers, herders, traditional leaders, and marabouts.
Na hudu za a sa malamai. Malamai. Ka gane? To wa'anga duk ana sa su ga.
We are all members of the commission and work to make it functional.
Kaga dai manomi.
If we touch the agricultural area, the farmers will react.
Makiyayi aka taɓa makiyayi zai. Kuma hayo jiya.
And if we touch the grazing area or a corridor, the breeder will react.
Shi kuma mai.
If a shepherd enters a cultivated field, then the farmer will complain. To this end, we have to gather all these people. If we had not implemented it, we would have not realized its importance. Once settled, it helps us to deal with our problems and to protect us. It's true, we listened to the radio, but we learned a lot with the COFO. Upon implementation, we were brought up to date on existing laws, and since then, we continue to learn. Previously, people in rural areas were ignorant of all of that, but now they know a lot thanks to COFO. Even if the text of the Rural Code constitutes a major advance towards sustainable management of natural resources, local democracy, and securing agro-pastoral activities, its implementation still faces many obstacles. The inaccessibility of some parts of the country, illiteracy, and overall lack of resources hamper the implementation of the Rural Code institutions in many parts of the country. Moreover, this balance between positive law and customary law still seems fragile and is sometimes a source of confusion. Former mayor of Gadebeji, pastoral area. Generally, the problem arises through traditional leaders, because they are the first landowners and are therefore installing people without explaining to those who settle that the law does not allow cultivation of the space.
Sans définir à l'agriculteur qui est arrivé ou qui s'est sédentarisé que cet espace-là n'est pas.
So the custom gives the land, and the law prohibits cultivation of it. This is why there is a problem.
La coutume qui donne les terres et la loi qui n'a pas défini, enfin qui interdit en tout cas la culture dans ce lieu-là. Donc, et là, c'est ça où ça glisse un peu le problème.
Well, COFO is a good system.
C'est un bon système.
But the problem with COFO, basic COFO, and district COFO is that they always stumble over the traditional leadership, over the customs, and usually those who implement the rules at the COFO level are positioned within these traditional structures, which are still very strong. That is the problem because the chiefdoms are still very strong. Chief of the Azagor group of tribes and villages, agricultural and pastoral area. Before, when we had enough land and someone was requesting a field, the leader of the group would have called the chief of a village that can allocate him land. But today there is no more land. Only our land remains, that of the herders. And we do not want anyone to touch it. So there is a contradiction. The traditional chiefs of the district, that is to say, the cultivators, and of the group, the herders, disagree on land management. Our goals are different, and so are the needs of our citizens. The agricultural frontier has surpassed the Tarka Valley by more than 20 kilometers into the north, and this was done without our consent. Sometimes I prevent the cultivation of land through an agreement between me and the chief of the district who has sent someone here to cultivate, but sometimes it is beyond me and I cannot stop it. They know the law in detail. They know full well that in pastoral areas there is no cultivation. But imagine a traditional chief, whose citizens have lost their cattle, were born here, grew up here. He cannot tell them not to cultivate. He cannot forbid citizens who have lost their cattle from growing crops. Traditional leadership is important. I'm not saying that it must disappear straight away, no. I say that whenever a problem arises, and the law can be used, then the traditional chiefs must accept it.
Mais là où il n'y a pas la loi,
And where the law cannot be used, the customs take precedence. It's about complementarity.
il y a une complémentarité qui se pose.
Our authority on the land depends on our relationship with the administration. Authorities as such cannot manage and control these lands without the traditional leaders. Currently, it is only together, between the traditional leadership and the territorial authorities, that conflicts between cultivators and herders can be managed. The strength of land management is based on the harmonious relationship between the customary chiefs and administration. We need this agreement in order to solve problems. That's true, the problems may arise again, because COFO cannot afford to continue to resolve conflict. The COFO, leaders, and citizens themselves, we are able to resolve conflicts together, but with great difficulty. This is not as easy as before when we were financially supported. In our area, there are still serious problems that need deep pockets to be solved. The day before yesterday, with the permanent secretary of the Dakoro Department COFO and the chief of the district Birni Lale, we went into the field to solve certain conflicts. But it's very difficult to get the farmers to finance our trips. Only with tips can we move and solve the problems. It's really unfortunate that there are not enough resources available in the COFO, while part of the population of the department is still not yet informed. The Rural Code is a process. It is indeed necessary to constantly improve it until it becomes perfect. The ideal is very difficult to achieve. It was a first step, and whenever insufficiencies are identified, the central government tries to solve the problem. What the Rural Code has brought us is equal rights of all citizens of Niger, without exclusion. Despite its obvious limitations, the benefits associated with the implementation of the Rural Code in Niger are considerable. A decrease in the number of and violence in land conflicts, securing farmland and grazing areas, increasing opportunities for consultation, and support for learning local democracy. It has gradually become a frame of reference for forming rural development policies. The Rural Code constitutes a political experience quite original to West Africa. It has succeeded in creating a modern legal system based on the already existing rights and customs concerning access to natural resources. Started 20 years ago, this process continues today through an iterative approach that allows, day after day, learning by error.